Once upon a time in 12th century England, something strange climbed out of the earth. Two children, a boy and a girl, emerged from a deep pit dug in the countryside near a quiet Suffolk village called Woolpit. They looked lost, frightened, and completely out of place. But that wasn't what made the villagers freeze in shock. No, what truly sent whispers rippling through the fields was that these children weren't pale or sunburned like everyone else. Their skin shimmered with a distinct bright green hue, the color of new spring leaves. It sounds like the beginning of a fairy tale, or maybe the ending of one gone wrong. Yet according to the chronicler William of Newburgh, this bizarre event was no myth. In his 12th century history, he recorded that it took place during the reign of King Stephen, sometime between 1135 and 1154. The pit, he said, had been dug as an animal trap, a simple wolf pit, and out of it, these two strange children appeared. They wore clothes made of an unknown material, woven in colors no one recognized. Their hair, their eyes, their hands, all human, but their skin glowed green, not with envy, but with something entirely unnatural. Reapers working nearby saw them first. Terrified yet curious, they brought the children into Woolpit. The villagers crowded around, whispering prayers, crossing themselves, and wondering if they had just stumbled upon angels or demons. Now, oddly enough, there's no mention of this event in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, which usually recorded every strange and noteworthy thing happening in England up to 1154. Some historians take that as a sign the event might have happened a little later, perhaps during the reign of Henry II. But whatever the exact date, the story took firm root in England's folklore. Another historian, Ralph of Coggeshall, also recorded the incident. According to him, the children were taken in by a wealthy local man named Richard de Caen, or perhaps Richard de Calne, possibly a knight, though records of him are scarce. It was in his home that the mystery of the Green Children slowly began to unfold. At first, they refused all food. The villagers offered them bread, meat, milk, even berries and roots, but the children turned away from everything. Days passed, and just when people feared they would starve, the children spotted something familiar, freshly cut bean stalks. They tore them open eagerly and devoured the raw beans inside, the only thing they would eat for months. Slowly they began to adjust. The girl, curious and bright, started to learn English, while the boy remained weak and withdrawn. When she could finally speak enough to tell her story, what she revealed was stranger than anything the villagers had imagined. She said they came from a place called St. Martin's Land, a Christian land, she insisted, where everything and everyone was the same color as they were, bright, vibrant green. In that land, she said, the sun never shone, the world was cloaked in eternal twilight, and a mist hung over every hill and field. The children had been tending their father's flock when they heard the sound of bells in the distance, sweet, mysterious, and irresistible. They followed the sound through a dark cavern, and as they walked they felt dizzy, light-headed. Then suddenly they stumbled out into blinding sunlight and found themselves in Woolpit. The girl said that beyond a great river in their homeland, they could see another, brighter world, which the historians later assumed might have been England itself. But what was this St. Martin's Land? No one knew. Some claimed it was another country, others whispered it was another world, maybe underground, maybe on another planet. In 1998, a researcher named Paul Harris even proposed that it might have been a real English village called Fornham St. Martin, only a few miles from Woolpit and separated by a river. The name seemed a little too perfect to ignore. Still, the details didn't fit. There were no caverns, no perpetual twilight, and certainly no reason anyone there would turn green. Whatever the truth, the villagers of Woolpit had never seen anything like it. And as the Green Children story spread, people across England began to wonder whether they were lost travelers or visitors from somewhere far beyond human understanding. Weeks passed in the little village, and the two strange children slowly began to change. Their green hue, once so vivid it startled anyone who saw them, began to fade little by little. The villagers took this as a good sign. Maybe the children weren't creatures of magic after all, but simply human. Still, No one could explain why their skin had been green in the first place. Back in the 12th century, people didn't have science to lean on, only superstition, and the world was full of mysteries. So naturally, the villagers jumped to the most obvious conclusion. The children must be fairies. It made perfect sense to them. The pair had appeared suddenly from beneath the ground, spoke a strange tongue, and told stories about a misty twilight land. In those days, fairies weren't cute little sprites with wands. They were thought to be powerful, otherworldly beings, capable of taking humans into their realm and sometimes sending them back changed forever. To the people of Woolpit, these two were living proof that the fairy world was real. But as centuries passed, new thinkers tried to find a more rational explanation. In the 1600s, an English writer named Robert Burton, author of The Anatomy of Melancholy, put forward an outlandish idea for his time. He claimed the children were aliens, beings who had fallen from the heavens, from a planet where the sun never shone. It sounds ridiculous, yet centuries later, Scottish astronomer Duncan Lunan picked up the same thread. He suggested that the children had been teleported, perhaps accidentally, from another world to ours. Green-skinned visitors arriving through a kind of energy beam. Science fiction fans couldn't help but see the resemblance to something right out of Star Trek. Still, not everyone bought the alien angle. Others turned to folklore for clues. One theory connected the tale to a 16th century English folk story called The Babes in the Wood, a grim tale that later inspired Hansel and Gretel. In that story, two orphans are poisoned with arsenic by their uncle. Some believed the Woolpit children might have been real-life victims of a similar crime, their green skin the result of arsenic poisoning. But that theory didn't quite hold up. Arsenic darkens the skin, it doesn't turn it green. A more medical explanation came later. Some researchers suggested the children had suffered from hypochromic anemia, a form of iron deficiency, also known as chlorosis, sometimes nicknamed the green sickness. It's caused by malnutrition, and it can give the skin a pale greenish tint. If the children had been starving before they were found, that might explain both their color and their obsession with raw beans. And indeed, as they ate better, their skin tone reportedly returned to normal. Whether by diet or by magic, the green faded away, though not for both. Sadly, the young boy never fully recovered. He remained frail and weak, refusing most food except for beans. After he and his sister were baptized, he grew ill and passed away. The girl, however, survived. As she grew older, she learned English fluently and began to adapt to life in Woolpit. But even as she grew more human in color and custom, she never stopped being a curiosity. People whispered about her in the streets, stared as she passed and called her the Green Girl, long after her color had gone. According to William of Newburgh, she lived for many years after her brother's death. According to Ralph of Coggeshall, she grew up loose and wanton in her conduct, a rather judgmental phrase, but typical of medieval chroniclers. Still, both agreed, she lived to adulthood, married, and remained in England for the rest of her life. And so the story of the Green Children slowly passed from living memory into legend. But centuries later, historians and storytellers would return to it, determined to uncover what really happened on that strange summer day in Woolpit, when two green-skinned children climbed out of the earth and changed history forever. Even after the girl grew up, the question remained, who were they? Where had they truly come from, and how had they ended up in a pit outside Woolpit? In the centuries that followed, countless theories tried to fill in the gaps left by history. Some were scientific, others pure imagination. But all were fueled by the same haunting mystery. Two children with green skin, appearing out of nowhere, speaking no known language, and telling stories about a sunless land. One of the more grounded theories appeared in the late 20th century. It suggested that the Green Children might have been Flemish immigrants, refugees from northern Belgium. During the 12th century, many Flemish families fled to England to escape war and famine. However, when King Henry II's troops fought rebellious Flemish forces near a place called Fornham St. Martin in 1173, chaos swept the countryside. It's possible, some believe, that two small children were separated from their family during that turmoil. Lost, hungry and frightened, they might have wandered into the woods near Woolpit, confused, malnourished and speaking Flemish, a language no one in the small English village could understand. Their strange clothes could have been foreign garments, and their greenish skin could have been the result of starvation and anemia. When the girl spoke of St. Martin's Land, perhaps she was simply naming the only home she remembered, Fornham St. Martin, and the villagers. Not understanding transformed it into something mythical. The misty twilight she described could have been nothing more than the fog of memory from a traumatized child. In other words, the Green Children might not have been aliens, fairies, or creatures of legend, just lost refugees whose story became stranger with every retelling. Still, the mystery refuses to die. Some researchers claim that the girl survived under the name Agnes, possibly marrying a royal official named Richard Barr, a servant to King Henry II. According to a few genealogical notes discovered centuries later, a woman by that name and of unusual origin did live in the area around that time. But the evidence is thin, and skeptics say it's far more likely to be coincidence than confirmation. What we know for certain is this: the boy died young. The girl grew up, married, and disappeared quietly into English life. Over the years, her green skin faded, her story dimmed, and eventually only the legend remained. But still it lingers. Maybe they were children of another realm. Maybe they wandered from a place deep underground, or slipped between worlds by accident. Or maybe, just maybe, they were flesh and blood, lost souls, whose suffering painted their skin the color of the earth itself. The truth lies buried in time, as deep and dark as the pit from which they first emerged. And even now, nearly 1,000 years later, the mystery of the Green Children of Woolpit still captures the imagination. Historians debate, scientists theorize. Storytellers keep the tale alive, because whether you believe they came from a hidden land, a distant planet, or simply the forgotten corners of human history, the story of the Green Children reminds us of something powerful. That even in the most ordinary of places, like a quiet English field, the world still holds mysteries we cannot explain.